What I want to talk about now is when kids come to you, come to us, with something that's going on. They're upset, they're scared. We were talking about feelings before, they're sad. Some of you have kids who have gone through some experiences, divorce, a death in the family, even just the stress in the environment, what's going on, a friend moves away. There are a lot of things. I know it's very easy as adults to think our lives are hard. We're trying to make mortgages, we're trying to make relationships work out, we're trying to make jobs work out. And you look at these kids and it looks like they've got nothing going on in their lives. And the reality is, childhood is a very stressful place, and some of us may remember that better than others. And we romanticize it, you know, and make it so, you know, it's what do you have to worry about? You're not paying a mortgage, you're not going to a job you hate, you know. So we really forget to respect the fact that kids have feelings that are very, very real for them. If I come to you and I trust you enough to share something I'm feeling with you, and by the way, that requires a huge amount of trust. Most of what we've learned in our culture in terms of responding to kids under stress has been actually something that will create an obstacle or a wall or additional stress in the relationship. We have, as a culture, not been taught to handle feelings very well. So what we typically do is we try to make the feelings go away, or we just blow up and we attack the kid for having a feeling, or we try to fix the problem so the kid doesn't have the feeling. None of those actually respect the fact that you're having a feeling. Now, to be honest with you, if I'm in crisis and I trust you enough to come and tell you about that, there's a few things I need from you. Number one, I need to be heard. I need somebody who's actually going to listen to me. Number two, I need to be accepted, which means you're not going to make a judgment about my right to have those feelings. And number three, I need to be validated, which is anything you say or do that gives me permission to have my feelings. Now, here's what most of us get instead. Let me just run through some of these. The dismissing or minimizing. How many of you, even as kids or adults, have gone to somebody and said, boy, I'm really upset or I'm anxious about this, and people say, oh, big deal, that's nothing to be upset about. Now, where's that validating? Does that give you space? See, what happens if you do that to me, it tells me, this is not a safe place. Now, I know that it's tempting to want to say that to just make the feelings go away. In the meantime, I'm upset enough to come and tell you that this bothers me. And by the way, I have to tell you, I used to be very uncomfortable about doing this part of the workshop. People used to say, you know, because it brings up a lot of stuff. Because how many of you just looking at some of these things are thinking, oh my Lord, I've said this week. Of course you did. You came by it honestly. We all do. And I want to tell you something. It's a lot easier to stand up here and talk about this now in a non-stress situation than it is to remember this. My husband never fails to remind me, that's not what you say in your workshops, you know. So it's getting better. It's process. Of course we say this. This is what we know. My point in doing this today is to make us a little more aware of what's coming out of our mouths, because it matters. I was doing this one time on a talk show, and I had a dad call me up furious. He's saying, wait a minute, you're saying we have to think about what we say to our kids? Yeah, we do. We don't do our relationships unconsciously and expect them to work out. This means that I'm willing to bring my consciousness, and I'm going to do this deliberately, and I'm going to think. And when I say something to a kid like, oh, that's no big deal, I can't believe you're upset about that, that something's going to go off as a result of this workshop, and you're going to think, something's going to go off in your mind, and you're going to think, oh, I'll bet that was on that list. Wait a minute, let me say this a different way. That's huge. That's huge. We just start noticing, oh, there's one of those non-supportive kind of responses. Yeah, I know that one real well, okay? Denying, oh, you don't really feel that way. Anybody here have monsters in their closet? When do they come and tell you that they've got monsters in the closet? Do they come when you're fully wide awake and conscious? No. When do they have monsters in the closet? 3, 4 in the morning, right? And what do we say? There's no such thing as monsters. Don't be ridiculous. And of course, your 4-year-old thanks you for clearing up his distorted reality, right? And goes off to bed. No, I have to tell you, I was doing this workshop down in Corpus one time, and it was for parents of preschool kids. And they all had, what is it in Texas? You all have these big monsters in your closets out here. So they were telling me that they had the monsters in the closet in this one situation. And the kid woke the mom up. Mommy, there's monsters in my closet. And what she did was very accepting and very validating. She just looked at him and she said, oh, monsters can be scary. What'll make you feel safe? He said, sell the house. 4-year-old. She said, that won't work for me, okay? She said, we're not gonna sell the house. What can make you feel safer in your bed? He said, well, can I sleep with you and mommy, with you and daddy? And she said, no, this is a grown-up bed. Only grown-ups stay in here. You have to stay in your own bed. What will make you feel safe? And he said, well, can we put the chair against the closet door? She said, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. And she actually, went out and she said, she walked in and she says, oh, well, you know what? We have the wrong pillowcase on it. She put a new pillowcase. This is a monster-proof pillowcase. And another mom was sitting there saying, well, you know what? My 4-year-old, this just happened last week. And she said, he woke me up. And she had read this like in some book or something. This is one of the, I have a book called The Parents' Book of Lists. And one of the lists is, 14 ways to deal with monsters in the closet. And so they're all things I've stolen from the parents I've worked with. And one of them told her son, well, you know what? I've got some monster spray. Let's get rid of this guy. Went down, 4 o'clock in the morning. Who has the presence of mind to do this? Got a Windex bottle, filled it with water, put a little sticker on it that said monster spray, and said, the lady at the store said this will send the monster home to his own mommy and daddy. So all you have to do is spray. And she said it took one night and that was the end of the monsters. The kid didn't have to dig in, didn't have to get neurotic. It's like monsters are scary. I've seen people who, as part of the, bedtime ritual, get the broom and they sweep the monsters out of the room and down to the garage. And I'll tell you something, you're not going to have to do that when the kid's 18, I promise. Do it when it's scary. It's like, well, do you need the broom? You need the monsters tonight? No, he hasn't been back for a while. End of story, okay? Distracting. This is where it's like, oh, well, you've got other people to play with. If I come to you when I'm sad and something's going on in my life, don't tell me about what's good in my life. We were talking today about how many kids now, we're seeing depression in younger and younger kids, in larger numbers of kids. We're seeing evidence of suicide. We're seeing, of suicidal tendencies, of, addiction, dependency kind of thing. If a kid comes and shares a feeling with you, there's a huge amount of trust there. Now, some of it might be attention getting, but if we honor the feeling and we don't go get all bent out of shape or try to talk the kid out of having the feeling, the kid doesn't have to dig in and prove that I really do feel this way. And I want to tell you something. If you don't get anything else out of this workshop, I'm going to give you what I think is one of the most destructive sentences you can say to a person in stress. And I want you to swear to me you're never going to say this, or at least be careful about this. You ready? Kid comes to you and says he's having a hard time. Cheer up. This is the best time of your life. Anybody here ever hear that one? Was it the best time of your life? No. Wouldn't it be neat? What if none of us has even hit the best time of our life yet? Wouldn't that be nice to know it's still coming? I like that idea. When I work with the gang members and I have these kids coming out of treatment centers and they're telling me my life sucks, agree with them. Of course it sucks. You're a teenager. This is probably the worst time of your life. Hang in there. Do not die. It will get better. And I'll tell you something, I know where some of these kids are coming from, and their life does suck. And even if they think their life sucks because they just canceled their favorite TV show, well, yeah, it's really disappointing when they take our favorite entertainment off the air. Agree with them. Then they don't have to hold on to it. They can let it go and they can move on. End of story. Medicating. This is like the June Cleaver method. You remember from Leave It to Beaver, every time Beaver came home and he was sad, what did June do? Cookies and milk, exactly. To this day, every time I do something I hate doing, cookies and milk, It's just like, what this does is it kind of gives the kids the message that anytime you're having a feeling you're uncomfortable with, do something or take something so you don't have the feeling. Now, I've told parents before, you really want to cheer your kids up? Don't mess around with the cookies and milk. Oh, you didn't make the team. Come here, let me pour you a shot of Jack Daniels. Do you know, energetically it's the same thing. And for 50% of men and 60% of women in this culture, food is the same as heroin for some people. I don't want to think, I'm having a tough day. Do we have any icing? No, I'm having a tough day. Let me have my feelings, deal with the problem, and get on. Now, we're not talking about solving the problem now. We're simply talking about honoring the feelings. And to honor the feelings, it means we're going to avoid saying some of these things. All right, how about these? Responses that make the kid wrong for having feelings. This is what's going to happen when you've told the kid how to avoid the problem and they completely ignore you. And you say, that milk carton's a little heavy. Why don't you let mommy do it? And the kid insists on doing it and drops it. And what do we always say? told you so. What did I tell you? How many times do I have to tell you? And it's just, you know what? The alternative is oops.
Paper towels over there.
Paper towels, go clean it up, and let's talk about how you're going to get milk when you're thirsty next time, if mommy's not available. Or what can we do to solve this problem? And maybe if that's the issue, we're going to have a small container for you to take anytime you want milk. How can we both get what we want? Because this is just too big for anybody your size right now. You will be able to handle this pretty soon. In the meantime, let's make it small enough for you to manage so you can get what you want. You know, another one. Kid comes home crying, somebody called him a name. Oh, well, you're just too sensitive. Everybody in this room is sensitive about different things. And there are days that I'm sensitive about things more than I am on other days. Nobody gets to judge how sensitive I'm supposed to be. So that's another one of those sentences we can't. And by the way, if somebody comes and tells you, oh, you shouldn't be so sensitive, you know, thank you for sharing, change the subject and go talk to somebody else about your feelings, because that's not a safe person. And that's a real scary thing to do. Very few of us have been taught how to take care of ourselves and ask for what we want. And that's another thing I want to see our kids learning, is how to say no, is learning how to say knock it off if somebody's hurting them, is learning how to say, I'll play with you if you're not going to be mean to me, and walk away and go make another friend, rather than stand there and have somebody hurting them. Yeah. Where are they going to get that? If we act like victims, if we're not asking for what we want, I need a hug. And it's like, instead of me saying, I wasn't taught to say, I need a hug, come over here, I'm having a hard day. And if you can't do it now, can you work it in before bedtime, please? No, what do? I need a hug, and I expect you to be a mind reader, so I'm walking around slamming doors because you're so inconsiderate. What's wrong with you, you know? We learn how to ask for what we want, okay? Blaming. Well, what did you do to her? Now I got two problems. Challenging. Well, why does that bother you? Well, I have a problem with that. And even a counselor, we know that if I'm in a state of upset, I'm not even in a part of the brain where I can, that's analytical, rational things. And I'll tell you the truth, I'm pretty smart. And when I'm upset, I don't always know what's bothering me or why it's bothering me. When I talk about listening, I spend a lot of time on my own. And I'm also a real verbal person, so I'm one of those people that gets well by kind of processing, but I don't have to do it verbally. You know, I mean, I kind of don't used to go up to, excuse me, officer, I'm really having this problem with my, no, you know. What I do, I'll write about it. I put it on paper. World-class journaler here since 6th grade. I do, and until I get to the point where I can afford to hire a psychiatrist to come full-time with me and process with me every time something comes up for me, I use my journal. That's a way of being heard. Being heard is also about me letting you know when I'm available. Don't ask me to don't challenge me, don't ask me to justify my feelings, don't ask me to explain it. Because if you say, why does that bother you, what that says is, okay, I gotta come up with one of those people-pleasing answers that you approve of. It doesn't matter why it bothers me. You either respect the feelings or you don't. And we don't have to analyze it, okay? The biggest problems I think we're going to run into are the ones about giving advice or rescuing. How many times do I see parents run into school because their kid forgot the homework again? And they take the kid's lunch money or the, you know, whose job is that? And if you do decide that you're not taking homework, you are not faxing their homework into the school when they forget, then we have to say, this is your responsibility. And I may have, where's your checklist? Okay, you're walking out the door. Do you have all your homework? Do you have all this? Or I may even say that part is your responsibility too, or I'll give you a list to check off and you're responsible. The only way I'm gonna get that though is if I call and say, Mommy, I forgot my lunch again. And you say, I'll bet you'll remember it tomorrow. What did we decide about this? What did we agree about this? Whose job is that? We have to have that conversation ahead of time. Yeah, I saw it here on the counter. Yeah, you must have been pretty busy this morning. You must have had a lot on your mind. That's okay, I forget stuff too. And what kind of options does your child have? Now that is huge, and it's very, very hard to follow through. Very hard. The alternative to giving advice is asking questions. So when a kid says, my English teacher hates me, instead of saying, oh no, she doesn't, or whatever, giving advice, ask questions. What's going on? How's she treat the other kids? How would you like her to treat you? What do you think she wants? What have you tried in that class? What seems to work for the other kids? What are you willing to do differently? You see what you're doing? Every time you ask a question, you put the responsibility back on the kid. And this helps the kid learn to be a problem solver. Now, a lot of times you're going to say, oh, I don't know. Well, why don't you think about it and let's talk in a little bit. It's okay. You need a little time to think about it? That's okay, I'll be here. And by the way, if they need you to listen and you're on the phone or you're cooking dinner or you have 12 things going on or you're too stressed to actually give them the attention they need, it is perfectly legitimate. Here's that win-win boundary. Listen, this is important. I want to hear what you have to say. Why don't you go hang out in the, in the living room, go watch TV, go outside and play. Come back when you hear the buzzer. I'm going to set the buzzer, or when the TV show's over. I will make myself available for you then. Let me get this thing in the oven, and then I can come out and give you the attention you deserve. Do you see what you're doing now? You're validating the child's desire to be heard. This is important. I want to talk to you. Here's when I'll be able to give you the attention that you deserve. Rather than, can you just stop bugging me? Or see, we don't want to set a boundary because we don't want to hurt their feelings. This is why when they come over and they're pulling on us, we go, what? When all we have to say is, oh, I really do want to talk to you. You know, I'm a little stressed now. Give me till the big hand's on the 9, and I'll be right there. That's how we learn to take care of one another. That's how we learn to respect one another. That's how we learn that interdependency that is respectful yet still gives people the space they need to take care of their own needs. Questions?
Do you have anything that addresses certain ages with children that, from a maturation standpoint, they should be able to accept things? Because it seems as though pressures of society keeps having younger kids deal with certain issues that they're really not mature enough to deal with.
Yeah.
And yet they're there in terms of stuff that's going on in middle school that you know, as a kid growing up, you saw that going on in high school.
Right.
And it just seems like it's going lower and lower, and it doesn't seem, it's how to give kids coping skills for things that are, far more mature than they're ready to take on.
Yeah, kids are being exposed to things now that they haven't had to deal with in the past. But again, I think the process of just saying, this is something that most people didn't have to deal with until they were in their 20s or 30s, and here you are 11, that this is in your face, asking the questions and going back and forth of, yes, you have friends that are using drugs, and yes, it's going to be tempting. What are you going to do when you're tempted? If you decide not to do this, what are you going to do when everybody that you care about is making these choices to help them make those decisions before they're in that situation and have to do that? Or I don't know exactly what the pressures are, but there are developmentally now, kids have not really, there's a certain physical maturity that there's some research that's saying kids are maturing physically faster because of a number of other things, but emotionally, developmentally, a 7-year-old is not equipped to handle the same things as a 17-year-old, and yet many of them have those things in their lives. Okay, yeah.
My biggest issue is with the whining, because I have 3, they're triplets and they're almost 3, and I have like whining constantly in my ears, and and I always try not to make excuses. Oh, it's not just because there's 3 of them, it's because they're this certain age or whatever, but I'm having the biggest issue with getting so irritated with, but I want it, and
Validate.
on.
Oh, I'll bet you do. And then give them something to do. Come here, help me so we can eat faster.
Oh, okay, that's true.
Yeah. Agree with them. But I really, really want it. Well, it sure sounds like it. Of course you do. And see, we get into these arguments of, what did I say? It's just like, but we're going to eat. It's just like, well, we're going to eat fast. I'll tell you what, let's help me get the dinner on the table faster. Give me a hand with these napkins. Make sure everybody's got one on their plate. Give him something to do. Shift the attention. And if it's something that he can have, it's just like, oh, what a great idea. Let's all have one. But I really want a grape. Boy, that'd be great right now. Let's everybody take a grape break. Say that fast, Thank you all for coming here. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Yeah.